Imagine waking up on, well, a perfectly ordinary Tuesday.
Just a normal morning.
Right. You walk to your front door, and sitting right there on the welcome mat is a package.
Okay.
And it's wrapped in this thick brown craft paper, and it is sealed with dark wax. But it's this unsettling color that looks, honestly, almost exactly like dried blood.
Oh, wow. That's a vivid image.
Yeah. And stamped into that wax is the image of a closed eye.
Creepy.
Very. So inside this package is a deep water blue cloth-bound book. You open it, and you realize you are holding the definitive, complete story of your own life.
The whole thing.
The entire thing. I mean, this isn't, it's not a generic horoscope or a vague personality test.
Yeah.
It is a flawlessly factual, comprehensive account of every secret you have ever kept.
Every single one.
Every mistake you've tried to bury, every quiet triumph you've ever experienced. And at the very end of this book, the final chapter tells you exactly how the rest of your life is going to play out.
Down to the day, right?
Down to the exact day. So I guess the question for you listening is, would you read it?
I mean, it is the ultimate modern dilemma, but it's wrapped in a deeply ancient kind of dread.
Yeah.
Because, we are basically talking about the oracle at Delphi. But instead of being powered by mystical vapors, it's powered by infinite data.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are exploring the profound and, frankly, deeply unsettling tension between algorithmic prediction and human agency.
It's a big topic.
It really is. And our guide for this journey is an incredible piece of source material. It's excerpts from a novel called The Biography Machine, written by Max and Claude.
Right.
And our mission today is to dig into the beautifully complex questions this text raises. About data, determinism, and what it actually means to be a person rather than simply a recognizable pattern.
Because the premise of this omniscient machine, it asks a question that is just fiercely relevant to this current age of data we're all navigating.
Oh, 100%.
Like, when an algorithm knows you completely down to the microscopic details of your digital exhaust, does it merely observe your life or does it begin to author it?
That is the terrifying question. So, in the world of this novel, this machine, it's simply called Logos, or just the machine it operates is the ultimate inescapable version of your targeted ads.
Yeah. Inescapable is the right word.
Think of it like a Spotify wrapped for your entire soul.
I love that analogy. A Spotify wrapped for your soul.
Right. I mean, it's built from every digital trace you have ever left behind. Your browser history at 3 a.m.
Oh, no.
Yeah, your location data, your deleted text messages, even your biometric responses to certain images.
Yeah.
And it synthesizes all of that raw data into a literary masterpiece.
And we really experience the crushing weight of this through our protagonist.
Yes, Hana Voss. She's a 50-year-old novelist living in Prague.
Right. And what stands out immediately about Hana is, well, her initial refusal to engage with it at all.
Yeah, she totally ignored it.
Exactly. She actually received her biography 10 years ago when she was 40, but she chose not to open it.
Wow, that takes willpower.
It does. She hid it on a high shelf in her study, tucked behind her collected plays of Chekhov, and she just allowed the dust to settle on it for a whole decade.
10 years of just knowing it's there.
Yeah. She deliberately chose to pay this daily psychological tax of avoiding it, basically preserving the illusion of an unwritten future.
But then on this particular Tuesday, that psychological tax finally becomes too heavy to carry.
Right.
She breaks the wax seal. She sits down at her kitchen table, completely ignoring her coffee as it goes cold, ignoring the beautiful September light shifting across her apartment, and she just reads for 6 hours straight.
Just devours it.
Yeah. And the first thing that becomes apparent is the machine's terrifying competence.
Oh, the sheer scale of its capability is staggering. I mean, the text notes that after 15 years of operation and surviving 4 massive constitutional court cases...
Which, of course, there would be lawsuits.
Right, of course. But Logos boasts a 91.7% accuracy rate across all independently verifiable claims.
That is so high.
But the horror isn't really in the statistics, it's in the execution.
How so?
Well, it does not just list facts like a Wikipedia timeline. It functions as a master literary critic of the human subject. It understands the gap between Hana's intentions and her actual effects on the world.
Oh, man. Yeah, it absolutely nails her deepest psychological architecture, like things she barely admits to herself.
Exactly.
It details her father's emotional unavailability and brilliantly connects that to how it shaped the male characters in her own novels.
Which has to be devastating for a writer to read.
Right. It brings up a university friendship with a woman named Marketa that Hana just let fall apart correctly diagnosing that the distance was born purely out of Hana's jealousy.
Ouch.
And it even calculates the exact emotional distance she kept from her last two lovers.
Right, the detail about Tamas.
Yes, pointing out that it was the precise distance required to preserve the idealized memory of her late husband, Tomas.
And reading about Tamas actually makes her put her hand over her mouth.
Yeah.
Not because the machine got it wrong, but because being understood that thoroughly by a piece of software feels like a violation.
It totally is a violation.
The precision is just entirely invasive. You know, the human response to something superhuman is usually awe, but a 91.7% accuracy rate suggests something fundamentally different.
Like what?
Like deep, systematic, replicable competence. It delivers the uncanny feeling of being completely known by an entity that is entirely incapable of loving you.
Oh, that's chilling. Which brings us to the most devastating part of the book, the ending. Or, as the machine titles it, the Coda.
The Coda.
Right. So after 412 pages detailing this rich, incredibly complex 50 years of life, the machine gives Hana a mere 20 pages for the rest of her existence.
20 pages for the rest of her life. And the tone of this Coda is uniquely insidious because it isn't cruel.
No, not at all.
It is written with a gentle, softly modulated certainty. It reads like a doctor delivering terminal news with an impeccable, calming bedside manner.
Yeah, it declares her significant creative work complete. It states that her 4 published novels are the full maximum expression of her talent.
Which is brutal to hear as an artist.
Completely. And that the 5th novel she has been struggling to write for years is failing simply because she has nothing left to say.
Wow.
The machine actually refers to her as a living archive.
A living archive.
Yeah, it predicts she will teach, she will travel a bit, she will receive some late career retrospective awards, and she will experience a graceful denouement.
A fading out.
Exactly. And then it drops the final verdict. It says she will be, quote, content.
And that single word content, it basically functions as a life sentence. It strips away all future striving.
It really is a structural demotion in the narrative of her own existence. Like,
Yeah.
think about it. It's like being told by an infallible Oscar-winning director that you have just been recast as a minor background character in your own movie.
Oh, that's exactly what it feels like.
Right. Like, you still get to be on set, you still get to eat at craft services, but you do not affect the plot anymore. You are literally just waiting for the credits to roll.
And Hana's reaction to this gentle dismissal of her future is what drives the entire narrative forward.
Yeah, she doesn't just accept it.
No. She sits in the dark, processing this quiet ending, and what rises up in her is not grief. It isn't even wounded pride. The text describes it as something older and more animal.
Quote, the bodies know.
Exactly. The bodies know. It is the fundamental biological resistance of an organism being told it is finished.
So she immediately opens her laptop. She goes to a folder she hasn't touched in 4 years. Basically, a digital graveyard of 12 partial drafts for her failed 5th novel.
Right.
She starts reading, realizes the core idea actually has potential, and she begins writing again.
She starts working on the Blue Coat.
Yes, a novel called The Blue Coat, and she does it simply to prove to the machine that she is not a closed loop.
But, and here's the catch, this introduces a massive philosophical trap.
Right, because if a machine predicting your life is 91.7% accurate, is rebelling against it an act of free will, or is the rebellion exactly what the machine expected you to do?
This is the agonizing mental loop she finds herself caught in at 3 in the morning.
Oh, I'd be away too.
Like, if she finishes the novel solely to prove the machine wrong, but the machine's behavioral model already predicted she would try to prove it wrong, who is actually authoring her life?
It really reminds me of the observer effect in physics. You know?
Oh, say more about that.
Well, it's the idea that the mere act of observing a phenomenon inevitably changes the phenomenon itself.
Right.
Once you read the prediction, your behavior is forever altered by the existence of the prediction.
You can't unread it.
Exactly. If you do the exact opposite of what an algorithm predicts purely to spite it, your compass is still pointing to the algorithm.
Yes.
You're just following it in reverse, like a teenager rebelling against their parents by doing the exact opposite of what they want. The parents are still the ones dictating the parameters of the behavior.
That is a perfect parallel. And the trap snaps shut on Hana when she discovers that the biography is not a static document.
Oh, this part is wild.
Through a friend named Vera, who, by the way, seems to be the only person on Earth who actually read page 47 of Logos's Terms and Conditions.
Someone finally read the terms and conditions.
Right. So through Vera, Hana learns about the delta. It is a quarterly update to the model.
Oh, no.
Hana requests her delta, opens it up, and finds out that the machine knows everything. It tracks her keystrokes, her screen time, her search queries.
It knows she is writing the blue code.
It absolutely knows, but the crushing part is how the machine categorizes her writing.
Yeah, tell them about this, because this is so frustrating.
So the delta updates her Coda, acknowledging that a fifth novel might emerge, but it labels her sudden burst of writing as, quote, consistent with her established patterns.
Unbelievable.
It recognizes the impulse as a familiar mid-to-late career flicker, a predictable reactive spasm from a creatively blocked writer facing mortality.
It just writes off her entire rebellion.
It completely absorbs her fierce rebellion and flattens it into just another expected data point under a category called reactive reorientation.
Reactive reorientation. I mean, how do you escape a system that looks at your desperate, screaming resistance and calmly just checks a box?
You almost can't. The reality is that the rigging of this game is structural. It's not strictly deterministic.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Hana later attends an academic conference in Vienna where she meets a Finnish legal scholar named Emmi Lahtinen. Emmi actually sued Logos and lost.
Wow.
She articulates the core of the nightmare perfectly. The problem is not that the machine possesses absolute deterministic certainty about the future. The problem is that its narrative form performs determinism.
Okay, let's break down how that actually works in the human brain, because this feels like the crux of the whole issue.
Right. So underneath the beautiful literary prose, Logos is basically just running Bayesian probabilities. Math. It looks at massive sets of past behavior, continuously updates its assumptions, and guesses likely future outcomes. It is essentially saying, based on these variables, this might happen, but it delivers those probabilities in the form of a beautifully structured chronological story. And humans are profoundly wired for narrative.
Oh, absolutely.
When we read a compelling story arc, our brains have a cognitive bias that translates sequence into causality. We instinctively read A happened and then B happened as A caused B to happen.
So we read a literary climax as an inevitability.
Precisely. The algorithm takes a statistical guess and dresses it up in the authoritative, definitive clothing of a master biographer.
Wow.
In doing so, it removes the epistemic uncertainty that naturally exists about the future.
Epistemic uncertainty meaning basically the natural limit of what we can actually know.
Yes.
Like knowing a coin flip has a 50-50 chance, but having to accept the uncertainty of the result until it actually lands.
Yes, perfect analogy. The machine hides the coin while it's still in the air and tells you it already landed on heads.
That is so manipulative.
Because the first 400 pages of Hana's biography were so incredibly accurate about her past, which is mathematically easier because the data already exists, her brain automatically assigns that exact same weight of absolute truth to the 20 pages about her future.
So the narrative bias tricks her into believing a highly educated guess is a preordained destiny.
Exactly.
But if the narrative is so compelling that it traps you in this illusion of destiny, what actually breaks the spell? I mean, how do you escape a story that is constantly rewriting itself to include your attempts to escape?
Right. The million-dollar question.
In the source material, the answer lies in the margins of the math itself. Hana starts taking a bookbinding class in a neighborhood in Prague where she meets a retired civil engineer named Martin.
And Martin is a man whose entire career was built on understanding structure, load-bearing weight, and calculations.
Yeah.
He tells Hana the story of his late wife. His wife had also received her biography, and Logos had promised her 30 more years of a vibrant life.
But she didn't get 30 years.
No. She died 6 months later from a sudden illness that the data just hadn't caught.
Martin tells Hana that he spent a long time being furiously angry at the broken promise, which makes sense. But eventually, his perspective shifted as an engineer. He says, quote, "It's like standing in a building where you know the calculations were done correctly, and it fell down anyway."
That analogy cuts right to the heart of the illusion. Martin is describing the 8.3% error rate.
Right, because it's 91.7% accurate.
Logos is 91.7% accurate. His wife fell into the 8.3%. What that proves, fundamentally, is that a flawless model is still just a model.
Yeah.
A representation of a thing is not the thing itself. The map is not the territory. The calculation does not prevent the collapse.
And that realization totally shifts Hana's paradigm.
Yeah.
She realizes she has been trying to fight the machine on its own terms,
Right.
trying to prove the behavioral pattern wrong.
Right.
But she's not just a behavioral pattern. So she starts writing letters to the machine, unsent, intensely private letters.
I love this part.
It's so good. She writes, "You can log that I wrote a sentence. You can analyze its thematic connections to my previous work, but you cannot know what it cost to write a true sentence. You cannot know the feeling of it."
She is drawing a firm boundary around the phenomenological experience of being alive. She is claiming her interiority.
Let's clarify that for a second for anyone listening. When we talk about phenomenological experience, we're basically talking about the difference between a machine knowing the exact chemical composition, temperature, and roast profile of my morning coffee versus me actually experiencing the subjective pleasure of tasting it. The machine has the data. I have the experience.
Exactly. The machine can measure the inputs and the outputs, but the subjective lived experience is invisible to the algorithm.
Completely invisible.
And this realization leads to what is arguably the emotional climax of the text. It takes place in a flash forward to a bookshop in Berlin several years later.
Yeah, so Hana is at a reading for her novel, The Blue Coat, which, by the way, she did finish and she did publish.
She did it.
She did it.
Yeah.
During the Q&A, a woman approaches her. She's a primary school teacher, and she is practically vibrating with this urgent, quiet anger.
You can really picture her.
Yeah. She tells Hana that she read her own biography, and the machine told her she was going to be, quote, reliably good at her job for decades, that her life would just be adequate.
Just adequate.
And she asked Hana, how do you fight the adequate life?
And Hana's response is just a masterclass in proving the limits of data. She doesn't give the teacher a philosophical lecture on determinism.
No.
She simply asks the teacher to tell her a story about a specific student.
Right. And the teacher talks about a 7-year-old boy who deeply struggled to read. Like, none of the standard pedagogical methods worked.
Nothing was clicking.
Nothing. She spent 4 incredibly frustrating months making custom materials for him, trying different frameworks, failing over and over again. And then, one day, the fiction gives way.
It happens.
He reads his very first sentence. He reads it slowly, like he is carrying something incredibly fragile. And then he looks up at her.
Oh, man.
And the teacher smiles, at this deeply private, beautiful smile, just remembering the weight of that moment. And Hana looks at her and says, the machine doesn't have that.
It is a profound observation. Logos has the teacher's attendance records. It has the boy's standardized test scores. It can mathematically map the statistical progression of his reading level over those 4 months.
Yep, it has all the math.
But it absolutely cannot measure the looking up. It captures the observable exhaust of a life, the metrics, the output, the location pings, but it completely misses the engine driving it all.
The clash here is really between 2 different types of reality. You have the measurable external output versus the invisible human drive.
Right.
Hana finally understands that the machine's model is categorically insufficient. It isn't that Logos is bad at its job, it's that its job only covers the exterior.
Yes.
It can predict that she will sit at her desk and type a certain number of words, but it cannot experience the specific gravity of a story that desperately wants to be finished. The distance between the observable pattern and the interior, meaning that space right there is where human life actually happens.
It perfectly highlights the vast difference between being watched and being known.
Okay, let's talk about how the source material resolves this tension, because it's so satisfying.
It really is.
It is a year and 2 months after the first package arrived. It's a Tuesday again. A second package arrives on Hana's doorstep. It has the same brown paper, the same dark wax seal. She opens it, but the title embossed on the cover isn't a life anymore.
No, it's not.
It is an ongoing life.
The machine has issued a massive update. The Coda is no longer 20 pages of gentle denouement outlining her graceful fade into obscurity. It is now 63 pages, newly titled The Continuation.
And the machine actually addresses her rebellion directly.
Which is wild.
Yeah. It admits that she has spent a year arguing with it, and it concedes that she made a superior argument.
It literally says you win.
Basically, it acknowledges that no model is identical to the thing it models. But the absolute best part is the concession it makes at the very end. The machine admits it no longer knows how her story ends.
It is a stunning admission of defeat from an omniscient algorithm. The machine states that it isn't lacking data. It isn't a failure of its computational power.
Right.
It simply says that having watched her refuse her ending, having watched her wrestle with her own agency and write a novel out of sheer defiance, the person has become surprising.
The person is surprising.
Yes. It concludes that a model can predict the act of creation, but it cannot do the creating.
Quote, the person is surprising. It's a beautiful thought. And I want you, listening right now, to think about your own life in the context of this exact tension.
It's so relevant.
Because we do not have a Logos machine mailing us blue cloth-bound books detailing our future. But we are heavily, constantly algorithmicized.
Every single day.
Every day. We are modeled by platforms that predict what we are going to buy, what videos will keep us enraged or engaged, and what opinions we are most likely to agree with. They serve us our own psychological patterns on a silver platter.
They really do.
And it is so incredibly easy to just accept those patterns.
Yeah.
Start living within the invisible coda that data has already written for us, accepting the adequate, predictable version of our lives.
It is the path of least resistance. The algorithms tracking you right now know your patterns perfectly. They have the receipts of your past, and they can make highly educated, terrifyingly accurate guesses about your future.
Yeah.
But they only know your exterior. They only know what can be quantified and categorized. They cannot measure your interiority. They cannot predict your capacity for sudden, irrational grace, or that deeply subjective looking up moment in your daily life.
But I want to leave you with one final thought to explore on your own, something that builds on this entire dilemma. In the novel, the machine just observes Hana and writes a prediction. But in our reality, algorithms do not just sit back and observe our future. They actively curate our present to ensure their predictions come true.
They remove the friction.
Exactly. If a platform predicts you are going to spend 3 hours scrolling through a specific type of content, it doesn't just wait to see if it's right. It autoplays the next video.
Right, it pushes you.
It actively modifies your environment to keep you on the exact path it predicted for you. It builds a frictionless slide into the very future it claims to be merely guessing.
Whoa.
So the real question isn't just, how do you prove the prediction wrong? The question is, how do you introduce friction back into a life that algorithms are desperately trying to make smooth, predictable, and perfectly content? Tomorrow morning, when you open your phone and the algorithm feeds you exactly what it knows you want, remember the package on the doorstep. Remember that you can always choose to introduce a little friction. You can always choose to be surprising.